Friends, welcome back. Today is day 3 in our training program on SQL. Unfortunately, yesterday, last 10 minutes, there was a network interruption and we weren't able to continue with the session. It kind of ended abruptly. So we will continue with that. Okay, complete the concept of bulk insert, and then we will start with today's topics. So yesterday, what we had discussed was how to create tables, basic tables with basic structure, like giving the names to the columns and assigning a data type, inserting data into the tables. And we saw how all things can go wrong and what kind of things we need to take care of while inserting the data. And we were focused more on single insert, inserting one record at a time. We also understood about not null constraint and how we can assign a default value if required. Bulk insert is something we could not complete, so we will do that today. I will give you that demonstration today and then proceed to the agenda that we have for today. So I am trying to open PostgreSQL here. And I will look at the chat and answer your questions towards the end of the session. Okay, whatever questions come up, I will not be able to constantly monitor it, but towards the end, I will go through everything and answer it. Now, somebody yesterday was asking whether we will be able to reset the password in case we forget it. On Postgre, one good thing is the moment you connect to the server, you have an option to reset your master password. So if you have to reset it, you can do it from here. It is not a big problem. Okay. Now here I'm typing in my password and I'll click on OK. So I'm connected to the server. And under that PostgreSQL 15 server and the training database, which I created yesterday, is there. And in a database, there will be a schema. You can think of it like a logical structure within which we have all the tables created. Okay. Now, yesterday I had created a table employee. Let's say I would like to see what is the data that is already present here, if at all I have data or not. I'm going to go to the query tool. And how do we retrieve data from a table? We use the select statement, and select has minimum 2 things that we are supposed to specify. Select what and from where. I would like to select all the columns. So we indicate all columns with a star. We don't have to specify each and every column name. You can just give a star. From where? From the table employee. So when I run this query, you can see that there are 2 rows over here. 2 rows are already present. Now, I would like to insert more data into this table. So I will go to the notepad where I have the bulk insert query. Now look at this. For bulk insert, basically, each record can be separated with a comma and you can give it. Let me explain this query to you. So I'm inserting into table employee, and these are the fields for which I will be providing the data. And these are the values. The first record is for some employee named Mohan, comma, then I have given some more data for another employee, and then comma, and data for another employee. Okay, so you could just keep on entering how many ever records of data you might want to put there. You can put it under values. Employee one's detail, then comma, and second employee's detail, a comma, and the third employee's detail. So all the records in one go will now get inserted into the table. You can see the query ran successfully. And when I go and run this select command, you can notice that we have all the records for all the people for whom I have inserted the data in here. Okay, so this is one way of doing bulk insert where you're still entering the data, but you're putting all the rows in one go rather than writing a separate insert query each and every time. Okay, so when we have little data, this is fine. We can put it like this and we can write in the data, type it in. Okay, now imagine if you have been given data coming from a file. I have one file like this. The name of this file is customer, and there are certain columns in this file. As you can see, there are some columns. So I have customer ID in one column, customer name is the next column, the segment to which the customer belongs, the customer's age, country, city, state, postal code, and region. So basically the address of the customer. So this is a table that has all the customer info, name, and all the details about that customer. Now I need this data which is given to me in a spreadsheet to be placed inside a table, to be stored in a table on the PostgreSQL server. And the data is pretty huge. Okay, we have 794 rows. That's including the header. If I exclude the header, then it is 793 rows. Okay, and I need to take all of this data into the server. Imagine if I have to write insert query for all this. It's going to be a pretty time-consuming process. And imagine if we had 1 million records like this. It would be nearly an impossible task. So how do we do it? Okay, how can I just take all of this data and store it in a table in PostgreSQL, the whole bulk data in one go? For that, first of all, I need to create a table with this structure. What is the structure of this table? It has all of these columns in it. So I will have to create one table with all of these columns listed out and also specify their data type. Because if I do not specify the data type, it wouldn't work. So I'll go here. I already have the query, didn't want to sit and type and waste time. So I already typed it beforehand. Look at this. This is my query. Okay. Compare this query against the column list. Okay. Compare the query against the column list that is given to us. So what am I trying to do? Create a table with the name customer, which will have customer ID. And you can see the data in the customer ID column. It is a combination of alphabets, special characters, and numbers. So when you have alphanumerical data and special characters, you must take it as a varchar. Then customer name, there should be no doubt about it. It is definitely a character. Same with segment, the third column. Fourth column, age. I'm taking integer as the data type. And all the other columns, country, city, state, are all alphabetical. So that is text. And for postal code, which has numbers, I'm going to use integer. Okay, it need not be varchar. I'll use int. Because it is postal codes, and I think we have only numerical data in here throughout. Okay, and finally, we have the region. Okay, so this is my data and this is the table. So first I have to create the table. I have the query ready for creating the table, which I will simply copy and paste in this editor and run it. So in order to import the data from a file, first of all, you need to create the structure of the table. You see the query is successful, which means when I refresh tables here, customer is also there as a table. Now I need to import data. Rather than writing a insert statement to insert the records into the table, how do we directly import the data from an external file, like the Excel file? Okay. So I have to right click on the name of the table and go to this option, import export data, and then give the path to the file. From wherever I have the data present, I need to select the file and open it so that the path gets loaded and it has access to that file from that path, file name. Then you need to check the options tab. In our file, we saw that the first row was the header, customer ID, customer name, segment, age. So the header is on and you can cross-check the columns. All the columns that I created are over here, which is in line with the columns present in that file. Okay, if you have lesser number of columns, you missed out creating a column, putting a column in that table, but you import the file, then there will be a mismatch in the number of columns present in the table and in the file. That will lead to failure. It will not allow you to import the data in that case. Okay, so the columns should match. The data types also should match. Once we have cross-checked all this, when I click on OK, the data gets imported. You see here, it started copying the data from the file into the training database present on the PostgreSQL 15 server. And the process completed. Okay, the process completed, which means if I run a select query on the customer table, if the process was successful, it is supposed to show me the data. You can see it has loaded the data. You see that? Total how many rows? 793 rows. In one go, all the records from that file have been brought into the PostgreSQL server. Now, suppose when you are trying this, suppose it doesn't work. Suppose you get an error. If you're doing it for the very first time, you might get an error because you need to set up a binary path over here, without which importing the data or exporting the data will not be possible. Okay, to import data from an external file or export the data present in a table into an external file, a binary path, something called as a binary path, needs to be set up. How do we set it up? Let's see. Whenever we install PostgreSQL on our machine, in our C drive, under program files, you will find the folder corresponding to PostgreSQL. Double click on that folder and go into the server. The version is 15, and then go into the bin. Double click on the bin. After this, click in the address bar. So we need to copy this path. So when you click on the blank space in the address bar, the link, the path will get selected. Once the path is selected, look at the address bar. The path is selected. Now I'll just copy it with the Control-C. Go back to PG admin tool. Here, I'll have to go to File and Preferences. Then we need to scroll down a little bit on this Explorer bar, and we have paths. Under paths, we have binary paths. We need to select that. Then scroll down. PostgreSQL binary path needs to be set up. So you need to click here in this box, which would otherwise be empty. You need to click here and paste the path. Paste the path. See program files, PostgreSQL 15 bin. To be able to do that, once you have pasted the path, you need to select the radio button. Okay, because you need to know exactly where you're trying to configure the binary path for PostgreSQL 15. So we need to select that radio button. And then click on this small briefcase kind of an icon. Once you click on it, it will validate the binary path. So it is all good. Now I'll have to click on save. Of course, I didn't make any change here, so it's not enabled. But once you set up the path, you will be getting the option to save. My path is already set, so it's not, because I didn't make any change to that path, it's not allowing me to save. Okay, it's already set. Basically, it is configured. Once you save it, then again, when you go back and try to import the data, it would work. Okay, so that is how we do bulk insert by either writing a lot of records in one insert statement, okay, putting a lot of records in one statement, or if your data is directly coming from some other file from an external source, okay, you can do it. From an external source also, you can do it. Now, if you're using MySQL Workbench, the procedure will be pretty much the same in all the tools. Only the syntax or maybe the setup of the binary path variables, those things could be a little different here and there. Okay. Yeah, this data is sample superstore. And in this program, in this training program, I will be able to demonstrate everything on PostgreSQL only. We are limiting or we are focusing on that particular tool because it's a very, very famous tool that is used for storing relational data. The same procedure, same statements will work on other tools also, but little bit you may have to go to this tool specific documentation and check. Okay. All right. So this was actually something that I was supposed to cover in yesterday's session, which I couldn't because of the network interruption. Now let's proceed to today's agenda. We will try to understand about what is primary key, what is composite primary key and unique key. And if time permits, we will also cover foreign key. Otherwise, we'll do it tomorrow. So the agenda is these things. The file need not be in CSV format. The file that I brought in is an Excel file. It could be an Excel format also. All right. Now the notepads and the commands that we run, they will be shared with you via the WhatsApp group. Okay, yesterday also I had shared all the commands that I used in yesterday's session. I had shared it in the WhatsApp group, and today's commands also, after the session is over, I shall put it there. So anybody who has not yet joined the WhatsApp group, if you want, you can join there. So it will be easier for you to access the material. Okay, that is one point. And anybody who has not yet subscribed to the channel, I request you all to kindly subscribe. It would be a very, very big boost for us in the confidence taking this forward and conducting many more sessions like this in future. So it's a request that you all subscribe to the channel and support us. Thank you. It is okay whether your file is in Excel format or it is in CSV format. You can just import the data, and it is not case sensitive. The name of the file is not case sensitive. Okay, it is not case sensitive. All right. Today we are going to talk about primary key. Let us understand what is a primary key and what is its purpose. So I like to explain everything using practical examples. So first I'll start off with an example, then we will define it. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to create a table with the name student, and I have my queries here. The student table is going to have first name, which is going to be of varchar 20 characters, and not null constraint is being imposed. So we need to give an entry in the first name. Similarly, last name, age, the course to which the person is enrolled, and the default course, if nothing is entered, is going to be data analytics, and the fee. So this is going to be the structure of the table. Let me create it over here. Okay, now don't worry about the WhatsApp group and all. We'll do it. You'll just subscribe to the channel. We'll share it directly in the chat also. Okay, if the group is full and you're unable to join the group, need not worry. Just subscribe here and we will share it in the channel. Okay, so here I'm creating a table with the name student. I hope all of you are okay with the syntax and you have understood every element of the syntax. Here, the table is ready. I think it crashed. Just give me a moment. It's trying to restart. So yesterday I had created this training database, and under the schemas, we can find the tables. And let me see whether it's created. Yes, my student table is created. Let me open the query tool. And now let me do I'll do a select star from student to show you what exactly is present over here. Look at this. We do not have any data because I didn't insert any data. So these are the columns in that table: first name, last name, age, course enrolled, and the course fee. All right. Now I'll put some data into it. I'm going to insert some records in here. Okay, let me insert the data. I'm inserting the data for first name, last name, age, and course fee. I'm not putting any data for course enrolled. Why? Because I've given the default course enrolled as data analytics, which means even if I skip that, it is going to automatically consider data analytics. I'll make an entry into the table by inserting this record. So data for this person is inserted. What if I try to insert the same record again? Or maybe, okay, I'll just run the same command one more time. It will work. It will not throw an error. It will not say that you have already inserted data for Madhavi. Why is it so? Because it's not checking for uniqueness. Okay. And in reality also, maybe there are two different people. Maybe there is a person with the name Madhavi Kumari who's 24 years old and paid 40,000 for data analytics and enrolled. Maybe there's another person also with the same name, with the same age, and paid the same fee and enrolled for the same course. Quite possible, right? Then how are we going to uniquely distinguish or identify who is who? Two people who have the same name, who are of the same age. I know it is very unlikely, but it could happen. So in this case, how do we recognize each person in a unique way? Generally, an identification number is given. So if I give an identification number, if I give this person a different ID, if I give this person a different ID, then it will be easier for me to recognize who is who. So that is why an ID column is generally very important in a table. Now, what I will do is, I will drop the student table. Okay, let me just drop the table student. And I will recreate it. Okay, this time while recreating, I'm going to insert an ID column. So compared to the previous create statement, and if you look at this create statement, the only thing different here is, here I don't have ID, and here I have inserted an ID column. So I'm going to insert ID. And then create this table with ID column also into it. Now I'm going to try and insert some data. Okay, so I'll insert some data for Madhavi Kumari, the first person. This is the data. You can see that I have included ID in the column list and I'm giving her an ID of 1. And when I run this command, it will work. It will insert the data. Now, what if I run it again? What will happen if I run the same command again? Let's see. It worked. Right? Okay, why did I put ID column? So that I can uniquely recognize each and every person. I can identify who is who. Here, I've given the same ID to both of them and it worked. Okay, let me show you the data in there. By running this command, you see both of them have an ID 1 that also has been accepted. This is not acceptable. I agree that there can be two people with the same name, with the same age, same fee, enrolled to the same program. Till there it sounded logical. But giving the same ID to both of them is not sounding logical. It is absolutely incorrect. The reason we have an ID field is to be able to uniquely recognize them. So how do we impose that constraint? How do we say that when you're entering values into this column, make sure you give unique values. Make sure that you do not give repetitive values. And this is ID. So we will make this column ID a primary key. Now, what is a primary key? It is when you define something as a primary key, duplicate values will not be allowed in that column. And it is a key by which we can recognize. It would be a value using which we would be able to recognize each and every record in a unique manner. Okay, so here I would be able to recognize each and every customer in a unique manner by using the identification number. So how do we create a table now? By incorporating the primary key. I remove the table. I'm going to recreate it, this time with primary key constraint. So one way of defining the primary key is followed by the name of the column and the data type of the column. You have to specify the word primary key. When we specify this word primary key, it is understood that ID will be a primary key, which means what? Duplicate entries will not be allowed. And it is basically that value using which every record in the table will be recognized in a unique way. So now that I have created it with the primary key constraint, let me try and insert this row. It will work because this is the first entry into the table. But when I try to insert the same details, again, it's going to throw an error. Why? Because I have violated the constraint that is there. The primary key constraint. P key is the primary key constraint, and the value in the ID column, which is equal to 1, already exists. So I can't enter another employee with the same ID 1 here. So like this, by putting the primary key constraint, we can make sure that there are no repetitions, there are no duplicates entered over here. Okay. So I will delete the number 1 and make it 2. I'm giving an identification number of 2. So when I do this, it will work. And if I show you the data that is present in that table now, you can see both the records. So this Madhavi is the one who has identification number 1. And the second record, this Madhavi is a person who has identification number as 2. So we can now uniquely recognize each of them based on their identification numbers. There is another way in which we can define the primary key. One way is that immediately followed by the name of the column, we mention the word primary key. Another way is, you can try it out later. After you have provided the list of all the columns, okay, towards the end of the table, you can mention the primary key. You can say primary key, and then in brackets, give the name of the column that is supposed to act as the primary key. If you type in this command, this will also work. So we basically provide the complete list of columns, and finally towards the end, we say that so-and-so column ID is supposed to be treated as a primary key. This query also will work. Either things, any of the things are fine. So I hope you'll understood what is a primary key. Now let me try one more thing. I will try to insert the data for another student, but I will give null in the place of ID. I will give null and try to enter the data. Okay, some other name, some other person. If I run this, it is going to throw an error. What is the error that it is throwing now? It is saying that we are violating the not null constraint. Now, where did we specify not null constraint? We didn't, isn't it? All I said is take ID and consider it to be a primary key. I nowhere specified that this is not null. This happens by default. Okay. What happens by default when you mark something as a primary key? First thing is the values in that column should be unique in such a way that every record can be recognized by that key column. Second point is primary key will not accept nulls. If you enter null in the primary key column, it is not going to be acceptable. So even though we may not explicitly go here and say that this is not null, even though we may not explicitly define the not null constraint, it is understood. It is understood that it cannot be null. Why? Because that is one of the features of primary key. It will not allow null values. Okay. So you can try this from the notepad where I have taken primary key as the last statement in the insert statement. Now we will talk about creating something called as a composite primary key. That's the next topic from our agenda, composite primary key. So I would like to create one table here called as sales rep, where I have the sales representative's first name, last name, and salary. That is all. Okay. First name, last name, and salary of the sales representative. And let's say we have been asked to just work with this data, first and last name and salary. There's no identification column over here. Okay. Now here, there are no primary key. There is no primary key, and we don't have any null constraint or any default value given. It's a simple table with 3 columns in it. And the only constraint that is imposed is not null, which means we are expected to enter a name in the first name field. We are expected to give some data to the last name field, and we are also expected to enter the salary. All the data is necessary here. 3 columns are there. All of them are marked not null. So we need data. I'm going to insert. You look at the statement here, it is bulk insert. In one go, I'm inserting the data for 3 customers. Okay. In one go, I'm trying to insert data for Anil Sharma, Ankit Verma, and this another entry, Anil Sharma. Will this work? It will work. Why will it work? Because we did not put any primary key constraint. We did not say this so-and-so thing is supposed to be unique. Nothing of that sort. So when I try to get the data, okay, when I try to get the data from this table and let's see the data, you can see all the 3 records have been inserted. One way to make sure that everything is unique or to recognize each person in a unique way is to put a primary key, create an ID column and put a primary key, which we have already seen in the previous scenario. Now, let's say here we have been given specific instructions to make sure that first name and last name, combination of first name and last name is always going to be unique. Okay, here we have to make sure that the combination of the first name and last name of the employee, the sales rep, is supposed to be unique. Then how to do it? Let me drop the table. I'm going to drop the table and recreate it. So while recreating the table, if I say, okay, this is supposed to be primary key, and this is also supposed to be primary key, right? Because I want the combination of first name and last name to be treated as the primary key. Again, I repeat, I want the combination of first name and last name to be the primary key. So if I give it like this, it will not work. Why will it not work? Because we cannot have multiple primary keys on one table. This is another feature of primary key. In one table, it is possible to have only one primary key. You can't have multiple primary keys. Okay, but that so here also I'm not trying to have multiple primary keys. What is my requirement? I want the combination of first name and last name to be considered a primary key. The way I'm mentioning it here, the syntax is incorrect. Okay, my intention is correct, but my syntax is wrong. So I'll just go here because I'm not able to convey it correctly. I'm saying 2 primary keys and it's not going to allow 2 primary keys. Multiple primary keys are not allowed on a table. So what to do? What is it that we actually need? We don't need multiple primary keys. We need 2 columns combination to be considered a primary key, which means I need a composite primary key. I want a composite primary key over here. So I will mention primary key should be a combination of the rep first name and the rep's last name. Okay. Let me run this query now and you can see that it will work. It will work. We cannot have multiple primary keys in a table, but you can have a primary key with multiple fields in it. Hope you got it. Okay. You can have a primary key with multiple keys in it. Okay. Tanuja, you did not install Stack Builder, uncheck Stack Builder, and the rest 3 you install. There will be 4 in that list, right? Uncheck Stack Builder, and the other 3 you do. Can we talk about auto increment? Yes, we will do that. We will talk about auto increment. All right. Now let me try to insert. I'm going to try and insert data here. This statement will fail. It's going to fail. Why has it failed? Because we are violating the primary key constraint, right? We are saying, you see here, the key, which is a combination of rep first name and last name. In this combination, in that key, we have Anil Sharma present because that is the first row. And then if I try to insert Anil Sharma again, it is not going to allow. I'll have to change it. So I'll just change this to, let's say, Sunil Sharma. Okay. Now when I run this, it will work because I'm not violating the constraint. Each and every combination of first name and last name is unique. Okay. Combination of first name and last name in every record is unique. So what did we learn about primary key now? What are the main important points that we have understood about a primary key? Primary key is used to recognize each and every record in a distinct manner. And even though you don't explicitly specify not null when you define something as a primary key, by default, it is not null. It will not accept nulls. And there can be only one primary key in a table. Multiple primary keys are not allowed. However, a primary key can be a combination of multiple columns. And in that case, it is called as a composite primary key. Okay, how to define a composite primary key? I hope you all understood. So Shubham, you should define it by just writing primary key. Whereas, and then in the parenthesis, you will specify names of both the fields or how many ever fields which are supposed to act as a primary key. So the combination of data present in these two will help you to uniquely recognize every row. And the combination of these two is a primary key now. And when you're running the statements, just select the part of that statement which you would like to run. Don't select everything else. Okay, don't select the other things. All right. I think you would have made that mistake. Maybe you have selected this also when you ran it, and it would have thrown an error. No, both are the same. Both are the same, I think. All right. Now that we have understood about primary key and we understood the properties of a primary key, we will proceed to another concept called as unique key. Unique key allows us to enter only unique or distinct values into a field. Isn't that what a primary key also does? Right? Primary key makes sure that only unique values, that is distinct values, are entered into a field. That is exactly what primary key is doing. Then why do we need a unique key? Because in a table, you can have only one primary key. But a table will allow multiple unique keys. In a primary key, null values are not allowed. But you can have null entries also in a unique key. Unique key will allow for null entries. And in a table, you can have multiple unique keys. When would we use this? Let us consider one scenario again to understand what is a unique key and how is it different from a primary key. Primary key is that key that is used to recognize every record in a unique manner. It will allow only distinct values. It will not allow nulls. And you can have only one primary key. Okay, that is clear. But in a table, there could be other columns also where we might have to allow only distinct unique values to be entered, where repetition should not be allowed. For example, consider a table where we are storing the email IDs, email registration table. Let's say you have set up one email server, okay, and you're inviting people to create accounts on that email server. So you send them a form, they will fill in their first name, they will fill in their last name, and they will give the email that they might want to use. Okay, they can just, whatever they feel they like, they will just type it, and you have to provide that as an email ID to them. Okay, now we can make sure that the combination of first name and last name is always unique by defining it as a composite primary key. However, the email is also supposed to be unique, correct? Email also is supposed to be unique. We can't assign the same email ID to two different people. If I allow the same email ID to be taken by two different people, then that is not correct. Even you people might have encountered this problem, right? When you're creating an account on Gmail, it will give you some suggestions. It will say these are the email IDs available, and you pick one from it, or you can type in the email that you want. Suppose the email ID that you have typed in there, with which you would want to create an account on the mail server, if that email ID is already taken up by some other person, if that email ID was already given away to somebody else, you will get a pop-up, right? You will get a message saying, this email ID is not available. Please try a different one. I'm sure you would have come across such scenarios where you're prompted to try a different email ID because the email ID that you are asking for is already assigned or allotted to somebody else. So how do these pop-ups come? When a unique constraint is defined. So I'm going to create a table here. Again, I will give you the proper demonstration. Here I'm creating a table called email registration, which will have the first name, last name, and the email, okay, with which a person would like to sign up for the email account. Now, table is created, and let's say there is a person with the name Mohan Bhargav who goes to that email server and tries to set up an email. And when that person tries to enter the details, it worked. Okay, we have given Mohan Bhargav the email ID mohan_b@gmail.com. Then let's say there's another person who would also like to have an email account on this server. There is Mohan Bajpai. And Mohan Bajpai also preferred to use Mohan_B as the email ID. Will this allow? It will allow for now. Okay, that means we have given the same email. We have given out the same email ID to two different people. Now, when someone sends an email to Mohan_B, it might go to both of them. Isn't it? This is incorrect. This should not be allowed in the first place. Forget someone sending an email. It should not be allowed in the first place. How can two different people be given the same ID? So how do we prevent such things from happening? We will define a unique key constraint on the email ID. Okay, so I'm going to drop the email registration table, and while creating it, I'm going to create it with the unique constraint imposed on it. Okay, I'm going to drop this table first and I'll recreate it. So first, I'm saying the email ID is supposed to be unique. How do you put the unique key constraint? These are all constraints. Primary key constraint. Okay, unique key constraint, because we are imposing some restrictions. We're imposing some restrictions. We are making sure that we streamline things, that certain rules are followed over here. Okay, by simply specifying the keyword unique, we are telling that email should be unique. And of course, I would like to take the combination of first name and last name as my primary key on this table. So I'm going to run this query, and the table is created with the necessary constraints in place. Combination of first name and last name should be unique, and because it is a primary key, and email is also supposed to be unique. As we cannot have multiple primary keys, we are using the unique key constraint instead to make sure that the email is always unique. Now, if I try to enter data for Mohan, and remember, I have dropped this table, I created it again, so it will allow. And if I now go and try to enter the email with the same email, if I try to enter another record, okay, Mohan Bhargav has taken the email. Now, if this person tries to ask for the same email, there's an error. There's a violation to the unique constraint that we have imposed on the email column. In the email column, where we have the unique key constraint put, Mohan_Gmail is already taken. Okay, it is already taken. So we cannot give it to another person. Okay, what if Mohan Bajpai, who is not allowed to take this email ID, just decides to not create an email ID for now? Leave it as null for now. Can he leave it as null without selecting an email ID? Yes, it's possible. If I run this, it will work. It will work. And when I select the data, you can see that we have made an entry for Mohan Bajpai, even though that person has not chosen to enter or to give himself any email ID. Why did this work? Because we have imposed unique constraint. And when you impose unique constraint, it is not by default going to be not null. When you mark something as unique, null values are allowed. It can be null. If you put the data, it should be unique. If you don't put the data, it could be null. It will accept nulls. Unique key will accept nulls. Primary key will not. Okay. So what I will do is, if I don't want nulls to be entered over here, I want to make sure that at any given point of time, the person enters an email like over there. I have to put the not null constraint. So let me just drop this and recreate the table with the not null constraint. It is supposed to be unique, but unique by default is not, not null. So I'm going to say not null and unique. What is the change that I made? I'm saying this email ID, first of all, is supposed to be not null, means you're expected to make an entry there. You can't leave it, and it should be unique. Two constraints are being imposed. So let me create with the new constraints. Okay, now if I try to run this query where the person tries to leave the email column as null, it will fail. Why? Because it has now violated the not null constraint. Okay, so this person needs to choose an email ID. There is no way that he can leave it null because we have explicitly put the not null constraint over there. This will work. Okay, and when we enter for this person, we should use a different email ID for this person. So maybe this person will select it as Mohan_Vajpayee. Now it will work. So it is unique, and the not null constraint is also not violated, and therefore the entry is allowed. If I do a select star now, you can notice both the records for both the people with different email IDs registered into the email table. You cannot have multiple composite keys. That is not possible. You can have multiple fields inside the composite primary key, but you can't have multiple composite primary keys. Okay, Vardhan? And then not null, default, primary key, unique. These are constraints. They are not command. They are not DML commands. These are constraints. And if you want to somehow categorize them into DML or DDL or all, you can say they are DDL. They are defining the definition of the table, right? They are not DML, they are DDL. They are dealing with the definition of the table, not with the rows. They are dealing with the definition. All right. Will we be taking up distinct clause? We will take it up, yes. Lock, I don't know where. Okay, we'll see. So that was about unique key. I hope you all understood unique key constraint also. I think we have covered pretty much everything with respect to unique key, that it will not allow for duplicate entry. And if you have specifically imposed not null constraint, then only it will not allow nulls. Otherwise, it will allow nulls, and then you can try entering different data. So let's focus on the differences between the primary key and the unique key now. What are the differences? There can be only one primary key in a table, whereas there can be multiple unique keys. Primary key cannot be null, whereas unique key can be null. If you don't want that, you have to explicitly put the not null constraint. So I hope you all understood the difference between primary key and unique key. All right, we will now talk about the foreign key constraint. Okay, we'll talk about the foreign key constraint. Again, this is not very easy to understand, so I will explain it with an example. Okay, so let's say I'm going to create a table employee. Okay, create a table employee, and it is going to have these columns in it: ID, first name, last name, age, location, which is by default Hyderabad, and department. Okay, so I'm going to create an employee table. We're focusing on the foreign key concept now. Okay, we have understood primary key, composite primary key, unique key. Now we are focusing on the foreign key concept, which is a little tricky. So I request you all to give me your 100% attention. Okay, so I'm going to drop table employee first and create it. So while creating the employee table, look at what I have done here. Earlier, when we created employee table with an ID field, I had given it as ID, integer, and I defined it as a primary key. And then I had to manually enter the identification number 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth for each employee. What if, because ID is an auto incremented number, right? ID is something that has to keep on getting automatically incremented. When there are a few employees, there's no problem. You can remember that, okay, I made an entry for 5 employees yesterday. Today, when I'm making an entry for a new employee, I will start with 6. Okay, then 7, then 8. But imagine if you're dealing with a very large organization, how do we keep track of how many records or employees? Data we have already entered. And while entering the new employees record, every time if you have to go and check what was the last number, and then take the next number and assign it to the new employee, it would become a tedious process. Okay, how about automatically incrementing the ID column? Okay, for that, a keyword called as serial is used. I'm marking ID as a primary key, but I don't want to explicitly enter the identification number as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on. I want the system to automatically generate the identification number and also automatically increment it. So I don't have to worry about, going and checking what was the last employee ID and then taking up a new number from there on. Okay, I want it to be automated. So we simply use the keyword serial. It will automatically increment the values in the identification column. Okay, so the table is created. Once the table is created, I'm going to insert some data. Okay, I'm going to insert some data into the employee table. So I'm inserting bulk insert. I'm just putting data for a few employees there. So we have Mohan Bhargav, we have Manoj Bajpayee and Rani Kumari, 3 different people. One person is enrolled into, is being recruited into the IT department. We have another person who's being recruited as an employee who will work in the HR department. And we have another employee who will be working in the finance department. Okay, so we are entering their details also. Now, when I run this query, you can see that, okay, we have 3 employees and these are the departments that are present in our organization. The company has these 3 departments in there. Now, let's say the recruitment team has recruited another employee. Okay, so they have recruited another employee, and for that employee, we need to make entry into the table. And let's say this employee is being recruited, and while entering the name of the department for this employee, there has been a mistake. Maybe the person got confused and is putting that employee into a department called as healthcare. Yeah, Suraj, in MySQL, we will use auto increment as the keyword. In PostgreSQL, it is serial. That is the keyword that is used for auto increment. Correct. Okay. Now, there is no department with the name healthcare that exists in this organization at all. Let's say my company does not have any healthcare department in it. It has IT, it has HR department, and it has the finance department. These are the only 3 departments. And the data entry person is trying to make an entry for an employee into a department healthcare, which does not exist in the organization at all. And when I run this command, it will not throw any error. It will nicely accept the entry and it will show me that Priyadarshini is in healthcare department, which doesn't exist. So if the department itself doesn't exist, how can that person go and work in that department, in that company? There's a mistake over here. We should not allow such things to happen, right? Then how do I make sure that when a person is entering the organization, there is an entry made for that person in the right department? How do I make sure that the person is assigned to the correct department and randomly not just any XYZ department like this? In such cases, we use the foreign key constraint. Okay, so while entering the data into my employee table, I need to make sure that for department, I reference, while making an entry into the employee table, this employee table should reference, should cross-check the department with the department table. We need to cross-check whether this department exists or not. And let's assume that we have another table called as department with the list of departments in it. So whenever an entry is being made into the employee table, the department data has to be referenced. It has to be cross-checked against the department table. So how do we make this table access another table and reference over there, cross-check with that, and then make sure that the department is existing and only then allow an entry? Make sure that the department exists and only then allow an entry. Okay, how do we do that? For that, first of all, I need the department table, of course. So I'll very quickly create the department table. And in my department table, as you can see, department name is the primary key. Why am I saying this should be primary key? Because when you impose a foreign key constraint, foreign key of one table can reference the primary key of another table, not a non-primary key. Okay, it can't reference a non-prime attribute. This is called as the prime attribute, primary key. And when you don't give primary key, then that is a non-prime field. Okay, we can have only one prime attribute and we can have many non-prime attributes. So when the foreign key of one table has to reference or cross-check another table, it can reference the primary key of that table. Okay, so here I'm creating the list of departments and department name is going to be the primary key. What are the 3 departments that we have in our organization? One is IT, then I have finance, then I have HR. These are the 3 departments, okay? These are the 3 departments. IT department is there, finance is there, and HR. Let me run it. Done. So I know what are the departments existing. I think we'll go a little beyond our timeline today. Let's see. So these are the 3 departments and these are the names of the department heads. Now I need to impose a constraint, right? While inserting data into the employee table, we need to make sure that department from the employee references the department name from the department table, which is the primary key here, and an entry should be allowed only if the department exists over here. Okay, so how do I do it? Now, so far, every time I had to make a change to the table, to the structure of the table. Every time I had to define a key or impose a not null constraint or give a default value. Since yesterday, I've been deleting the tables. I've been dropping the table and recreating it with the new constraint, right? I was dropping and creating, dropping and creating. Is there a way to not drop the table every time we make a mistake? Can we alter the structure of the table? We can do that using the alter command, but I think it will be too much for today. We will stop here. Okay, I'm going to leave you all with the question. If a department doesn't exist in the department table, how do we restrict data entry in the employee table? Okay, how can we make sure that nobody enters an employee into a department that does not exist in the organization? And when such entries are made, how do we make sure that it throws an error? It prompts us saying we are making a mistake. This department doesn't exist. It is done through foreign key constraint, but how do we actually implement it? We will see it tomorrow. So I hope the problem statement is clear. The scenario is clear. How do we take care of this scenario? How do we handle it is what we will be looking at tomorrow. Okay. So thank you all so much for your support. It's been amazing that most of you are joining every day. I would really appreciate it if you could all subscribe and like the video. And whatever comments you have, you can leave it on our channel. We will share the notepads with you through the YouTube channel itself. Okay, in the comments or the description section, you will be given a link from where you can download the notepads. Okay. Please don't forget to subscribe and like the video. I will see you tomorrow where we will do a recap on the concept of keys and talk about foreign key and look at a few more constraints. Thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you. Can you show how to take this data, take from this database to BI2? Okay, how do we connect to this data from something like Tableau or Power BI? That's your question, right, Sai Sandeep? How to take this data into SQL live session is for 10 days. Okay. Today is the third session. We have 10 days session. Yes. Thank you all so much for subscribing. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.